Manchester. I'm Connie Van Houten. Some of you know me best from my radio show, What's Cool in Manchester Schools. Tonight I'm doing kind of an offshoot of that. I've invited some friends who are either running for the school board or are current school board members to talk about education. It's timely. This is when all of us are looking at elections and looking at putting together a school board that will move the city forward, and that's exactly what we're thinking about here. I firmly believe there's a lot that's cool in our schools. There's a great deal that is very good and a great deal more that we can be working on. I'll start by introducing some of my guests and letting them talk about themselves. To my right, Ethan Morehouse. Ethan is new into the political scene. He is running for a school board for his first term, and he will be representing Ward 7 should he achieve his election. Ethan, tell us about you.
Thank you, Connie. So my name is Ethan Morehouse. I'm running to be a school board member in Ward 7. The reason I'm running is because I feel that we need to have a strong student advocate on the board. I recently graduated from Memorial High School in 2016, so I just want to bring that fresh student perspective to the board so that we can truly fix what's happening in our schools and make them a much better place for our students that are receiving the education right now.
Thanks. We're going to hear a lot more from Ethan in the next few minutes, but I'd like to introduce a second guest that's with us tonight, Erica Connors. Erica is an incumbent and is running in Ward 8. Erica, will you tell us a bit about you, please?
Thank you, Connie. My name is Erica Connors. I am a current school board member in Ward 8 and also a candidate this year for state representative as well. I own a summer day camp for kids, so I have the opportunity to interact with students, parents, families all around Manchester on a daily basis. I love spending time in our schools, celebrating student achievements, meeting with principals, teachers. I am a parent of 3 young children as well, so I get to hear on a regular basis of what they're doing in the schools, what's happening around them, participate in athletic events with them. I'm also a coach, business owner, and I have my degree in education as well.
And I, too, am running for the school board. I'm the incumbent in Ward 12. This is my second term. I'm hoping for a third term. My background is strongly an educational background. I'm a Manchester native. I was born here. I was educated in Manchester Public Schools. I graduated from West High School, taught at Memorial High School for some 36 years. I have also been involved a great deal in a variety of ways other than teaching high school. I held certification from kindergarten to grade 12 in special ed, gifted and talented. I've taught adult education to immigrants and refugees in Manchester programs. I've taught in public schools. I've taught in private schools. So my background is strongly education, but we are indeed a citizens board. And so each of us brings something very different to the table. We've just had our final guest sneak in, and I'd like to take a moment to have him introduce himself as well. Dan Bergeron. Yes, Dan, would you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hi, I'm Dan Bergeron, Board of School Committee. Do you all say Board of School Committee or do you say School Board?
Either one. They're both good. Yeah,
I'm
they're
just
both
wondering
good.
if the public, like if most people identify with Board of School Committee, but anyway, for Ward 6, and been on a couple of times before then, just appointed, but I feel like this term, things have like really come together, you know? I feel sort of like the right thing always happens, and it has been happening, and I think today was evident of that, and that's probably what I can discuss further. But this term, just like this past term, although there was term oil, you like that?
Very good.
I felt like, I felt like we're going in the right directions, and a lot happened as far as partnering with the community. So I feel good about the trajectory right now. So. Am I supposed to talk about like more resume item?
Yeah, tell a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll get into our discussions, please.
Well, I guess I've always been active in the schools along with our kids, like a lot of parents do. That's how I met this guy over here, Ethan, because he was active in the schools too as a student. And so you just kind of go alongside your kids, and I think my kids realized very young, probably as yours did, that dad's not going away when they get to school. If there's an activity, it's like I'm probably alongside, and maybe I wasn't satisfied, like just sitting on the sidelines. You had to even dig in a little bit more and so whatnot. But at the time I hadn't really realized that it was actually training for this position, because I didn't think about school board. Someone, I was appointed first, so it was really someone else's thinking, so it was kind of a mentor thing. And that, once I got on there, it sort of felt right. Then I realized why I was like in the school so often, because it worked out and I had a lot of experience. I got my degrees late, finished my bachelor's 20 years later. I call it the awakening, is what I call it. All of a sudden you realize part of your brain was probably dormant for all those 20 years, and And it was almost like this sense of, I don't know, I just wanted to get so much done. And so I think the school district gained from that. And I just decided after quitting 10 years of, full-time work at PC Connection, my wife and I decided that one of us needed to go home full-time. I thought it was a good idea with kids in high school. So that was me, sort of reprising my role from the first 5 years. And I just supplemented my time and my skills just by going to anything in the community that was either free or cheap. And that's how I got to know all of the nonprofits and all of the businesses and everybody that supports our students. One at a time, you get to know them all, and it's vast, and I'm not done. So.
Okay,
I
thanks.
think what he says is important is that as school board members, we do have the opportunity to interact with so many people on a daily basis, and we get to be part of some of these incredible things within our schools. We've gotten to do different assemblies that the schools have, but we also have gone to amazing presentations today. We heard about the launching of a new program over at West High School. We've gotten to see firsthand what's happening on the STEAM program or what's happening in Parker Varney. It's really just amazing to be able to see firsthand what's happening in our schools and to be able to have the flexibility. Yes, we check in with the schools, the principals know we're there, but just to actually see what's happening.
Even just to interact with the youngsters. I think it was last week that I was with a couple of fifth graders who were building robots. I could never build a robot. But they were just so competently and confidently, this is young ladies, girls, it was a program for girls, and I was just mesmerized by them. They asked me a couple of times to participate, and I realized immediately that I should keep out of it and just say, I'm just observing. But they amaze me. What we're doing in our schools today, if you get under the hood and get into those buildings and see what's going on, it's absolutely fantastic. For those of you just tuning in, that's our cast of characters. We have 4 people here to talk about schools, school board, anything that is relevant to us in terms of being better for our citizens and better for our schools. We will be using a casual format. Sometimes there are specific questions, but we're just here to talk and to discuss things and to go with them as best we can. So I'm just going to throw a question out right now, and that's why anybody's interested in school boards. And I'm going to start with you, Ethan. Why are you going to school to run for school board?
So like I said earlier, the reason that I'm running for the school board is because I feel that we need to have that strong student voice on the board. Since Manchester, unfortunately, doesn't have a student advisory council or a student member on the board, I felt that it was time to have that strong student voice, someone who was just recently in the schools. Being that I graduated from Memorial in 2016 and I was in Manchester Public Schools for almost 10 years, I felt that, now is the time to run. Now is the time to make that change. What we've seen happening at Parker Varney, all these new innovative things, we need to bring that to all the schools so that way all these kids are getting this excellent education. Personally, I had a few downfalls. Like I remember telling you, my freshman year of English class, I had to sit on the floor because we didn't have enough desks because we had overcrowded class sizes. How am I going to learn in an environment where there's 45 students? How am I going to grow as a student, as a person? That's not going to set me up for career excellence, which is, inevitably the whole point of school. So I'm running to be on the school board so that way we can change that. So that way the students are first, their education's being prioritized.
So how would you continue to keep that student voice coming to the board if you were elected? How are you going to network with?
So one of the things that I'd strongly work on is getting the student advisory, either student advisory council or student members on the board. Unfortunately, right now we don't have that, but looking over the charters and state laws, there's multiple different options that we can go. We can make, a little council, maybe one member from each of the 4 high schools in the city, or have some student members on the board. They just wouldn't, hopefully at some point they'd be able to vote, but unfortunately, as it looks like right now, they won't be able to vote.
I have some ideas.
And state law, of course, allows this. It allows to have student participation.
Nashua has one. They have 2 members who aren't voting members, unfortunately, but one from Nashua North and Nashua South that can advise the school board on the happenings of the schools. So I feel as Manchester, being the largest city in the state, and sort of being this role model school district that we can be, we should be following those trends.
So you'd bring your youthful ideas to the board
Yes.
and bring some others with you. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Jan, you
I have
started
a
to say
feeling
something.
You and I
Yeah.
are very similar in something that when you talk about student advisory, I think we go about that differently.
Well, I've had the opportunity to talk to students on a regular basis, and I have my children in my ear on a regular basis telling me exactly what they think. They're not shy about that. But we had a question the other night, Ethan and I, and actually all of us, I believe, were there at the time, from students saying they want a voice on the board. For my entire time on the board, I have been the youngest voice on the board, and I've been out of high school for 20 years now. So that's a long way off. So I really look forward to the opportunity to having a voice like Ethan on the board, or students coming from our schools to actually speak to us about what's happening. We can sit around a table having conversations and having debates, but they are the ones that are in our classrooms, and they are the ones that are learning and seeing what's happening, and they can tell us how they learn best and what's working, what's not working, and then we can look at the data based on what they're saying and move forward from there.
So we're kind of in agreement that a more responsive school board would be the direction we'd want to go.
Yeah, I mean,
Dan,
you
go.
have to almost supplement it, and I think that can actually work to our favor in a sense. The fact that we don't have that, I think we almost overcompensate, and we may even have almost a stronger representation through our voice if we do it effectively. I don't know how they do it in Nashua, like how those two people sort of collectively represent the voice of many. But I feel
Yeah,
like
I'm not
I
100%
represent
sure either.
I represent the voice of many. What I feel, after I told you the awakening when it comes to that. So I know that when you work for a company, you support, you look to the vision, the mission, in every decision you make. So to me, it was easy, especially when I was thrown in the board. I'm like, what do I do? And I'm like, okay, I'll look at the mission and the vision statement and start from there. And partner with the community, support students and educators. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So. And then all of a sudden all the other politics came in, and it's just sort of easy to just let that go by the wayside as long as you just know exactly what's guiding you. So for that reason, because we don't, I feel like I've gone out of my way to make sure. So in that sense, I'm talking to more students, and I see a lot of other board members do the same thing. So, student representation is on the board, maybe not directly. I think where I've always thought we could sort of do a little bit better is, this was my suggestion at the beginning of a school year. You know how there's always advisories when you have an advisory in school? I thought we should all divide and conquer. Like, all go to different schools, and at the beginning of the year, be there in an advisory and just sort of like, just say, I'm part of the school board, this is basically what we do, and this is how you can let us know what's going on. Things like that. Just a quick intro or whatnot, because I feel like a lot of students don't even really know what the school board is, and I feel like we need to do a little PR. What do you think, Harry?
I think you're right, and I think it's about the students, but it's also about the parents and families. I think a lot of people don't understand really what the school board does, what our role is, and how to interact with the school board, what we can do. I have people stop me at games, I have people stop me at the grocery store, things like that, to give me their little tidbits. But I also have conversations with people on the phone. A lot. I have a lot of parents and families call me, and they need help figuring out, what do I do with this concern? Who do I go to? And I think that's an overlooked part of the school board, is just helping people to navigate this huge web. We have the largest school district in the state, and I think
Good
a lot
point.
of people don't know where to go, and they don't know what to do. We have Facebook. As much as we love it, as much as we hate it, that's one avenue. But I think people look at that and say, oh, that must be the voice. That's not the voice of our district. That is one pocket of voices, but we have
Right.
so many different groups that we need to open our ears to and hear from around the district. And students is one of the biggest
absolutely.
groups that we need to open ourselves up
like
to.
the other evening at the education forum, afterwards, I know I should have gone over and met everybody else. I went straight to the students because I had so many questions for them.
Yeah.
And, it was awesome. And I find that they're easy to talk to in that sense. So, and they're receptive. As long as they know you respect them, they're all about, talking to you. Like, even you, Ethan, like, when I was running the POPs organization at Memorial High School, you were in the band. I know you remember this, and you were just being you, but I don't know if you recall how many out of the box ways you tried to solve certain problems that were there, and especially
Oh, yeah.
when we were like moving equipment from, when we were either moving to going to Salem or whatnot. It was amazing. Some of the things you came up with, but it was like one of those things where, so I kind of felt like by me watching you when I was on the board, you kind of did have a voice because it kind of helped me like really kind of just see, first of all, what students did and did not have. But, I mean, for assets, but what you did and what you did have here. So, I just feel like you've been training for this job for a while now, because you're like, all right, if we don't have it, what can we do? And, you might have to do a little some of that now. So.
We've kind of segued into another aspect, which is how students learn, student achievement, what great things are going on in our schools. Ethan, you mentioned Parker Varney. What interests you about what's going on at Parker Varney?
So my thing is, the whole of mixing up the grades. I can tell from personal experience. At some paces I was a slow learner for like English and math, but for the social studies and the sciences, I excelled. Those were my areas of interest. So if we were to expand that throughout the district, maybe for example, if I was in second grade and I was having trouble with math, I could go, maybe not back a level, but I could go and get some help, and then not holding back the rest of my class or having my class go too fast, and then I sort of feel like I'm being left behind. So if we were to sort of tailor our education towards each individual student, so that way all their needs are being met. Because like I met sometimes in my algebra classes in high school, for example, I'd be staying a lot after class because I felt like during the class I couldn't keep up, especially when it gets to the more complicated things.
When did you take algebra?
My freshman and junior years.
So it was good of you to take it in your freshman year. I wish someone had sort of gotten to my son before then, because he felt like by the end he was sort of behind in math, like, because getting someone, I think, would you agree that 8th grade is probably a good time to have a good conversation with somebody about, what to take that first year in high school? Like guidance is critical at that stage, like going
Absolutely.
from 8th to 9th.
Yeah.
And those are things we have to promote. I think as a board we have to promote those kinds of things, because back to what Erica was saying, a board member wears a variety of hats. You might actually be in interacting with kids one day, in with our superintendent, Dr. Vargas, the next day, discussing something on the board. Our board can sometimes get heated, but I think it's all toward the goal of airing ideas and coming out with a good solution. So yeah, I think a lot of those hats are there. And just back to what Ethan was saying, first of all, I agree with you about algebra. That certainly wasn't, I am an English teacher, but I agree with you. And that idea of seamlessly doing it at Parker Varney, now it is a pilot there. And people criticize the pilot to some degree because some money was infused there that doesn't go to all of the schools. But taking from that pilot and taking it into the other schools, I think, is not going to cost us anything. We have the trained staff, we have the philosophy, we have the goals. I don't know how the others if you feel about that.
Well, we have several pockets of innovation around our district right now. Parker Varney is just one of them. But they had a different model to be able to get that program off the ground, and they also had Title I funding, which is not available to all of our schools. So they had some things in place that allowed them. They also had a very innovative principal ready to take on that challenge.
And the partners also.
And they had partners in there that not all of our schools have access to right now. One thing I would love to see in the coming term is to see these pockets of innovation that we have spread across our district. If something is successful, and if we have the data to show that students are learning and performing and are engaged in these areas, then we should be able to spread it across the district.
I think what happened today could be a good example. Once we get data for things like that, it's going to be like, man, I left there so pumped today.
And that is one thing, is that we have not delved into the data much, and we don't have a lot of consistent data. Over the last couple of years, we've seen different testing models, different assessment models. But what you can see, not even comparing to the other towns, if you compare within our city, you can see that certain schools have things that are working better than other schools. If you look at Smith Road School, for example, their reading and English scores are much higher than the other schools. So what are they doing differently there? I think we need to look at that data, look at the programs that they're running, and figure out how
central with when it comes to like some of the AP support they have at that school.
They have phenomenal AP support there that some of the other schools don't have. So what are they doing differently?
Share the secret sauce.
And how can we spread that across how can we spread that across our district? And I think what we need is a board that's willing to work together as a team and set an agenda for a school board agenda, not set an agenda, so to speak, but a school board agenda where we can talk about education, where we can talk about data, and where we can talk about student success and student achievement.
And we do have a lot of things to celebrate in our district. I absolutely believe that. As you know, you've both been on my radio show, What's Cool in Manchester Schools, and I think we share that philosophy. And I think Ethan has most recently lived that philosophy. So we have to make sure that we are partners with the good, and we take care of what is not working as well. I think we have to take those challenges. And you hit on a point that I'd like to follow up just with briefly. We need to focus on kids. Our focus needs to be strongly on education, strongly on making sure that we are providing the direction for our superintendent and for the district executive team, so that they can go out and do things with kids. And we have to redirect our talents in that direction.
We've had a lot of discussions, and I think the public knows that lately, related to personalities on the board and conflicts there. I think we need to have an agenda, as I said, that's focused on education, to go forward from there, look at data. If people disagree with each other on votes around education, that's okay. We need different perspectives, and we need to have those kind of conversations. But we should be able to leave the boardroom and say,
Right.
the conversation is done. I'm sorry, the vote didn't go the way you hoped it would, but that we can still have civil conversations and move on to the next thing,
Yeah, we need
and
we need-
supporting our
we need
students
an
and
agen-
supporting our district.
We need an agenda, not our own agenda.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's a
So
good point.
that's really kind of
Thank you
what
for
it is.
clarifying
That's
it
a very
that way.
good
But,
Yes.
it's absolutely, it's true. And of course, what have I been harping about for 2 years, almost 2 years? Our brand, because it is so important. And today proved that. Because look at all the partners, and I guess we should probably cover that soon. But one thing I wanted to tell you for Connie is, the last day of school we had 3, I guess they were technically seniors that day, correct? On Connie's radio show.
They
On the
were
last day of
almost
school.
seniors, yeah.
Yeah, on the last day of school, they came and they were on her radio show, and I co-hosted that day because I just wanted the students' perspective, because I was there at the spring recognition where a lot of juniors get recognized, and we just wanted to get their perspective, and they were they had known each other for a while, but they shared a lot in that show. So I was thinking, we need more of that, because that was. We just asked them, and they told us. It's
Yeah.
pretty simple stuff, But by the same token, it was really nice to have that perspective,
And I think we need to open our eyes a little bit, look at the successes of the district. As you said, we have a lot of wonderful things, but we also have to look and say, yes, there are challenges to this district, and there are things that aren't working so well right now. And I think we have to acknowledge those before we can start addressing them and moving forward with our district as well.
Now, what do you think about community school? Like, I noticed that the middle school principals have done such a great job, first of all, working together and sort of creating really the community school, all 3 of them are community schools, because I remember going door to door and people tell me what South Side, that neighborhood, used to be like, and, I guess Ward 7. But I like the way that they've done that. But is it safe to say that each school, they have their own challenges, so it's important to know, like you say, there's pockets of innovation. Well, also there's sort of, every school has its own unique sort of skills and sets of challenges, and so we need to be able to recognize that as well as anything. In other words, and obviously the educators recognize that too. In other words, it can't be cookie cutter, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right, and I think we need to make sure that we're not afraid to hear those challenges, and we need to be open to hearing them from students. That's part of having a student voice on the board, is saying, okay, what do you want to tell us? And not be afraid that they're going to tell us something that we don't want to hear. We need to hear everything. We
Don't
need
be
to
afraid, Ethan.
Yeah, that was one thing I was afraid of as a student, because there's many times that I wanted to go speak in front of the school board, but I was afraid, no one ever wants to talk about the positive. It's always about the negative. So I was always afraid that there's going to be this big, backlash, when I walk out in the hall at the end, that someone's going to come up to
Oh
me.
my
and,
God, that's terrible.
that's why it goes back to the strong student voice. We really need to figure out what's happening in our schools to figure out how it works. Because one thing that works at, Parker Varney may not work at Green Acres, or at McLaughlin may not work at, Parkside or Southside. So we really have to figure out what's happening in each of our schools to really figure out, how we're going to fix our schools here.
And they need to share the good things that are going
Yeah.
on the academic level. But for instance, go to Beach Street for one of their cultural celebrations. It's just incredible. But it is Beach Street. It might not work someplace else because it comes from who they are and what the neighborhood is looking for. And I don't think we can factor out. And you brought this up, Dan, the community. How much Manchester's community is very rich, and they have given very greatly to us. We have mentorships. The STEAM program was born of a great deal of support from the digital companies around us. If you look at the
Actually,
sponsorships,
alumni. It came from our
Absolutely.
alumni that we do not celebrate at all.
and sponsorships that we have. People step up. The Celtics brought innovation to our two.
Partnering with SNU,
Yes,
2 labs.
absolutely. And I hesitate to say these people because there are so many more that I'm leaving out by not saving them. And even if we look at things like 21st Century and some of the other programs that we have after school that help to stretch us beyond the school day and give our kids, sometimes our neediest kids, what they
And they
need
even
to get through
aligned
the
their
school
curriculum
day.
with ours. When we made changes, they were right there to make it consistent. I liked that.
It is fantastic, I can't applaud the community enough, at least from my perspective, because they stretch us. When our budget dollars aren't there, they are there for us. And they may bring us the money, but they may bring us the expertise, or they may bring us the materials. And that makes us much richer, I think, than we would be otherwise. At least that's my perspective.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Okay, so how old were your kids when you first got on the board?
This is my 6th year on the board, so if I do the math, my youngest was 3 at the time.
Okay, so how about your oldest?
You're putting me on the spot
Oh,
here
the
with
only
my
reason
kids'
I'm trying-
birthdays.
let
I
me-
have
let
to
me
do
tell you
this.
where I'm
This is
going.
casual included,
Yes.
so go for
Yeah.
it.
So
What I'm trying to do is
my
I'm
oldest
trying
was
to-
8 at the time.
Because I'm trying to think, do you remember your perspective before school board? What your thoughts were, what you think back to what you thought about the district and really kind of what you thought was the strengths and weaknesses before all that information came to you. That's why, your feedback is going to be gold because you haven't,
It's only been about 1.5 years since I've been in the classroom. Whereas you were saying earlier, you're the youngest member and you haven't been in high school for 20 years. The 20 years is huge.
20 years is huge, and your question about with the perspective I came to the board with, I came with the perspective of an educator, because that's where my degree is, as is Connie's, and I came with those thoughts, and I knew what was happening in the classrooms and what should be happening. I knew where I was coming from another district and what I had been able to achieve in those classes, and then compare that to what we were doing in Manchester. But my perspective is definitely different as my kids have aged, and I can see what they want to get out of school, what they are getting that I didn't expect, what they're not getting that I wish they could have. So my perspective changes every single day, and anyone who says, I'm going to go to the school board and this is the plan I'm going to have and this is my thought and I'm always going to do this, I don't think that's logical, because the district
absolutely.
changes, lives change. My perspectives on things since I've had children is very different from before I had children.
And I think how we always need to their opinion.
I think we always need to have an open mind, be willing to hear other people's perspectives, other people's opinions, and then have those conversations.
Like my daughter would go to someone else's house and it's like, what, you tried red peppers there? And she liked them. So it's like, they're constantly changing. So we have to constantly adapt too. That's why
Yeah.
you can't be so set in your ways and have your values. We have to change them. We represent constituents because there are members of the board. There are members of the board that, their heart is in the right place. There is no doubt about that. But, we have to, I think a lot of us are of the mindset, and you'll discover that, we hire professionals. I'm not an HR professional. I'm, although I was an adjunct at Daniel Webster College and taught in every single program, it still doesn't make me a master educator. It was good preparing me for college prep and whatnot, but we have to trust our professionals if we're going to give them sort of that ability to be innovative. And where are we supposed to be, Erica? Where are we supposed to be at the board?
One of the things I've been working with Dr. Vargas, sort of quietly, but now it's starting to come to the board. Everybody's been given a book to read about effective school boards. We have a set of brilliant people on our school board, all from different walks of life. We have first responders, we have educators, lawyers, doctors, we have tradespeople, all kinds of careers that we come into. But one thing that we don't have in common is a common base of knowledge about education. And I would like to see continued education for our board so we understand what's happening.
That was a good
We need to talk about, when we're discussing Title I funding and where things can be moved, do we all have the same understanding of what Title I funding is? Does the public have an understanding of what that is? We can't just take those dollars and put them into hiring extra teachers at this school or that school. They have specific uses that they're for. I think we need to
Like,
talk
we're tied
about
to specific grants and
specific grant funding. We can learn about special ed law. We've had a lot of discussions at the board level of, separating special ed students into different schools, and I read about that in people's comments online on a regular basis about just do this, just do that, or just put the preschool kids in this building on the 3rd floor. You can't just do those things. And I think we need to have a board that understands that, understands what the law says. And if we need to change the law, then yes, we can work as a board to go up to the state, work towards the federal government to change those laws, but we have to understand what it says and where we can go from
you
there.
could always ask them for their interpretation and their help, like they've done recently for us. But
Well, there's no doubt that education is a dynamic entity. Every one of us
Absolutely.
is
Yeah, it
different.
is.
We change
Absolutely.
from day to day. We come with different concepts and beliefs and ideas, and then the world around us impacts what happens in our schools on a daily basis. Events that happen in our daily lives and our children's lives impact them greatly. They see things on TV, they hear things on the radio or whatever media they're into, which is often Facebook or something of that sort. And as a board, I think we have to be cognizant of that, because I believe in empowering the teachers. I believe in empowering our district administrators. They know, yes, I'm a trained educator, but I'm also a bit older, and my classroom experience lately has been adult ed and college, which is a little bit different than that with which we deal. So I believe in empowering them, but also being partners with them as they go down that road. Ethan, I'm going to come back to you again, because you seem to have some great ideas about what's going on in our schools. What do you think is our best asset? What's great about schools? What do we need to really deal with well when we go back to the board, assuming that we all return?
Well, I think the thing that we'd really have to focus in on is our teachers and our students. The teachers are our best assets. You can have all this fancy technology, all these computers, all these textbooks, all these things in like the sciences, all this chemistry equipment. But if you don't have good teachers, then the students aren't going to learn. So if we were to truly invest in our teachers and make sure that they're all trained with the up-to-date information, my science book, my chemistry book, my junior year, for the first few months was from the mid-'80s. How am I going to learn?
don't tell me, I don't want to hear it.
How am I?
Kidding,
How am I going to learn chemistry?
We have to be prepared, right?
Yeah. How am I going to be learning chemistry that was almost 30 years out to date? So if we were to invest in our teachers, make sure that they have all the adequate resources that they need.
Well, they probably
to teach.
compensate for that, knowing that, so they bring their skill and like compensate.
So like my chemistry teacher, we'd use the textbook as a reference, but then it was really all the hands-on learning that we did. So if we were to make sure that the teachers weren't having to pay for all these things out of pocket, because I remember my chemistry teacher was saying she'd have to pay for chemicals and supplies all out of her pocket to compensate for our textbooks being almost 30 years outdated.
That brings me a little bit when you're talking about the resources. You're also talking about class sizes too. We had an amazing question from a group of students the other day from YOU, asking about how to make students feel comfortable and feel safe in their
And what
schools.
does that stand for?
Youth
Youth
Organizers,
Organizers United.
Yes, I just want to, just because out there they may not
Yes.
know what YOD is.
Thank you.
so.
So they had a question about how do we make students feel safe, because a particular student didn't feel comfortable talking to their principal about an issue. And I think one of the most important things we can do to make our students feel safe is help them forge connections with these wonderful teachers that we have. If we have elementary class sizes of 30 students, I don't feel that the best teachers, I don't feel, can make those close connections with each and every one of their students. I think we need to focus on bringing our class sizes down to manageable sizes so kids can forge those connections, feel safe, feel that they have adults that they can confide in. I think we need to look at our programs, after-school programs, sports programs, and make sure we have those opportunities available for kids. Because if we don't have them forge those connections with teachers, then you're looking at dropouts, and I think that is a big risk that we face in our
Do you want
district.
to know what part of that safety and security is, though? For the educators to feel safe to come to us, either with innovative things or to be able to make those connections with students safely without, ruffling any feathers or whatnot. Because I think sometimes, we might be a little unapproachable. Or
I think, Ethan said it before, it's intimidating to go before the board, and I think people need to feel comfortable, whether it's teachers, parents, students, feel comfortable coming in front of us and not feel like they're going to have some backlash for sharing their opinion or for sharing their experience. but we want our teachers to feel free to innovate. We want our students to be happy and ready to learn and excited to be part of our district.
You know what I've realized is the people in Manchester have a different opinion of Manchester than the people outside of Manchester.
I was going to bring that up, the perception
it's
issue.
incredible.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it hit me when I think it was during Dr. Vargas when he was visiting schools, and someone had asked if, why Manchester? And he was like, why not? It disturbs me, or asking that type of question. And that's when I realized it's like sometimes we have to get out of our own way. And it's just because we're here. And I have to say, it's because people are active. They get an A for showing up, an A for effort. But at the same time, the people outside, and that was obvious today when you had all these partners coming in wanting to partner with us to innovate a high school. But, oftentimes that's why I'm traveling the state, and people are like, want to do absolutely some business with us because they see things differently.
So how do we change that perception? We know the good things that are
Yes.
going on here. We do know the challenges, and we are willing to roll up our sleeves. I think everyone who's willing to run for office, regardless of philosophy, is passionate about doing good things for kids. How do we let the world know just how cool we are, how good things
Like,
are
you sure
here?
you want me to answer that?
So
'Cause
I think
you've been listening to me answer that
I
question.
think
now.
we need to celebrate the good things. Okay, we need to get the word out there. We need partners with the media too. We need the local TV, the local newspaper to really hear what we're saying that is positive and get that word out there. But we also have to be willing to say these are our challenges and to show the public what we're doing to address those challenges. I think too often we say Manchester is great, but people see these other pieces that aren't quite great and think that we're just trying to cover things up. Instead, we need to say these are the challenges, and we need to start addressing those challenges. So
Absolutely.
people can see that Manchester is moving forward, that it's a great place for people to want to live in. We have districts around us. Manchester's student population has dropped drastically in the last...
It has across the state as well, though.
Exactly, but it has across the state, but it hasn't everywhere in the state. If you look at communities like Bedford, I hate to say it, but their student population has increased. I think somewhere around 10% they have increased. So what are they doing differently? Is it a marketing thing?
No,
Are they
haven't.
focusing on education? Are they telling people this community is dedicated to education, so come here if you want your students to be successful?
So how do we get across the idea that our scores, student achievement scores, are going up, and that's a tribute to who we are. We have a demographic here that's different than the demographic in Bedford or any place else. We are what we are. Manchester is its own city.
So I
Go, please, Dan. It's you're up next.
Go
I was
ahead.
trying to be like, was it Horseshack from Welcome Back, Kotter? Aging
I don't
myself.
know.
I'm
I
not
think it was
sure
Welcome-
either. You must be
yeah,
older
it was
than we are.
But I don't mind knowing
I
that because
know.
it was awesome. But obviously there's kind of a lot of ways to. Geez, where do I begin? But our brand is important. Our reputation is super important. And like you were talking, like today, like Jason Moon was there from New Hampshire Public Radio.
Yep.
And Carol Robidoux was there from, I know she's Manchester Inklink, but sometimes she actually, I think she either corresponds
It's a
with
variety
others,
of
but
news sources.
but variety of
Right.
news sources and absolutely, and also, I always say the statistic, and I don't know if you've heard this one yet, but 90% of a constituent's opinion of a district, if they don't know otherwise, can be formed from watching a school board meeting. So I always thought, we're a little behind there because
yeah.
when they watch us. So in other words, we have to almost like provide other sources.
No, you
know.
mentioned students' test scores too, and I don't think you can just look at the end result and say this percentage of students scored at proficient, because we need to look where our students are coming from
Exactly.
too. I had a great conversation with a teacher over at Beach Street Elementary School, for example, and she has students coming in from all over the place. And kids don't know how to hold a book to read. Not all of every student, I don't mean that, but there are students who come in and they take their book and they hold it up like this to read because that's what they've seen the teacher do. They haven't had a parent at home holding a book side by side and reading left to right with them.
Wow, it's so
They're
funny you
modeling what our
say that.
teachers are doing.
Right.
And if they're coming in not having read books at all, not having had someone read to them, their starting point is much different. And if they're making gains 1, 2, 3 grade levels, even if they're behind grade level at that point, they have still made amazing strides, and we are helping those students along.
And what's not measurable is the learning that students are using to learn. That learning to learn, that metacognition that we use as a term, which really isn't 100% applicable here. But if you don't know how to learn, how do you go to the next step?
Yeah.
And I found that out today too.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
like that was one thing. What Dan was talking about earlier when we were I remember when we were going to Washington D.C. my sophomore year at the band trip, talking about the innovation. I had to figure out how to get all this percussion equipment from Manchester, New Hampshire to Washington D.C. and back without it getting damaged. So that truly shows the innovation of what we can learn in our schools. But if you were to look at my test scores, personally, I wasn't a good test taker because I have some memory problems.
Good example.
So, just because I score low on, the Smarter Balance test or kneecaps or the SATs, if we were to all put those collectively together, that doesn't mean our district is necessarily
And part of
bad.
your grade was competency based.
Yeah.
In music.
Just because, our test grades may be low, that doesn't mean that the actual intelligence in our district is bad. It's just that not everyone is good at taking these tests, like myself. So we have to find other ways that we can truly find each student's full potential.
And performance assessment is one of the ways that we're starting to look at that
Yeah.
too, so that maybe you can add 2 plus 2 and you can do it on paper, and I can't, but maybe the two of us could work a manipulative or work how to maybe set up risers for a music festival or something of that sort, and use our math skills and our language skills in that matter as a learning tool, 1, but then 2 as an assessment, the teacher watching you do those kinds of things. We're doing a lot of innovations in the city of Manchester, and I think part of that is due to the fact that we're recognizing that there are different ways for youngsters to learn, but different ways for us to assess
Yeah.
what
Look at the
youngsters are
success
learning.
around just using the PSAT as
Yes.
a tool for and I have to compliment Dave Ryan and a lot of educators for because once again that's one thing, encouraging people. I always ask students when it comes to a PSAT or SAT, how was it sold to you?
Yeah.
If you look at it from a sales point, it's important that students see that people believe in it, like educators or principal, anybody, that they believe in it. It's like one of those things where, because I hear a lot of students say, I don't need it for college, or all sorts
I remember
of
I
things,
was told
but-
by some teachers that, you don't have to worry about the PSATs. They don't count towards your, they don't count towards your grade. They don't count towards your college application. But really, it can really, I took it. I remember I didn't do so well on them. So that put me in the position where, I have to prepare. It
But
set
did
me up.
any of the results surprise you? Like you were better in something than you thought, or like Cohen, for example, my son, he thought he'd do better in math. He did much better in English, and didn't do as well as math. But that surprised him. He was like, "Wow."
Well, one of the things that the PSAT has
So I'm
done,
wondering if there's anything that surprised you about you.
Not that I can, not that I can remember.
one of the things that the PSAT has done a really nice job of, that I don't think people knew it was for as well, was identifying AP potential.
Yes.
Yes.
Meaning a lot of kids
Yes.
will go in
Yes.
and say, I'm not a college kid, I'm not an AP kid, and just push things like that aside. But once they took that test, they had some great aptitude in some area that they didn't even know
Exactly.
they had.
And we've been
see
honored
that
for
they
that.
are capable of doing these things. And we've had a lot of conversations lately about not everybody needs to go to college. College isn't for everybody. And that's true. But I think we still need to prepare our students to be able to make that choice for themselves later on. They might say as a senior, hey, I don't want to go to college now. But what if 2 years from now they decide, hey, I do want to go to college? We need to make sure that they were prepared in high school, that they have the courses that they need to then go on to
Just
college
one
at that
AP
point.
class, and before I forget, I just want to encourage people, because I mentioned this the other night, because there was a big conversation from organizations about are we is it diverse enough in our AP selection, and I like we've been celebrated and honored by the College Board. So if you'd like, I think if you probably just use a search engine and go College Board Honor Roll, you'll see like the various states and districts that have been recognized. And our percentages in certain areas are like as far as some of the celebrating some of the diversity in those folks who like change their trajectory. And that's exactly correct. And someone being insightful to use that tool for that. So hopefully people will get the idea how useful it is and then start selling the PSAT as being a college prep thing, because now these students are maybe changing their mind about what they have to do.
I'm sorry, Ethan.
Like, sort of going back to the whole college thing, personally, after I graduated college, I took a gap year. I felt that it was, I had this calling to work. And I went back and I talked to some of my teachers, and I felt like it was frowned upon. Not going to college right away, is frowned upon for some reason. And I think we need to give students the mentality of, if they feel they're not ready for college, whether that's, they feel, their education isn't ready, they're financially not ready, mentally not ready, whatever, we need to support them in whatever their endeavors. If it's going to go work in the trade industry, or, you stay at home and, just work a regular job, but go to school later. Like, I took the gap year, and now I do college online at Southern New Hampshire University, because I knew I was going to, pursue my college degree. It's just I wanted to take that gap year. But not everyone is in that situation. Some of my friends that graduated before me still haven't gone to college because they feel, oh, is it the best thing for me? And we have to make sure that all of our students,
So you were trending, because at that time there were professionals out there that parents were hiring to actually plan that gap year, in a sense, not plan it to a T, but plan the gap year into what the student was doing.
Yeah.
So that was trending when you did it.
It's perfect for career
you were part of this
exploration.
trend and didn't even know it. But see, that's
Yeah.
And student loans are so big
They
right
are.
now. If somebody isn't sure what they want to do and they're not going to a college that will allow them to explore that for a year, it might be a good idea to
Yeah.
take that. But I just want to make sure that our students have the opportunity later on, that they have everything in place, that they can make that decision for themselves later on and not say, oh, well, nobody told me I should have taken those classes back then. All of our
you
students
mean
should
to
be
do like what he did.
right. All of our students should be. All of our students should be prepared to go to the military if they want to go into a trade if they want to go to college if they want to. We should have that so that it is absolutely up to the student where they want to go.
And we should recognize the Chamber of Commerce for their education leadership program, because that brings educators once a month into either the office of a CO or on the floor of manufacturing, just to get them so they can bring that experience into the classroom and realize there's more than one path. So that's been growing and very successful. So I think that kind of talks to that.
Yeah, and just to go back briefly to what Erica was saying, one of my most recent experiences in teaching has been in the community college. And I have found students who have been out of school for 10 years or 12 years or 12 minutes.
Or 20.
And and they come with different skill sets, but those I think that we have given the very best we can at the high school level still have some of that left to come with. They are ready to learn. They may be a little bit rusty in some of the specifics or some of the factual data, but I think we need to have kids involved in all of that. Recently at up in Concord, some of you know that I'm also a state representative, and of course, even though I'm not on the education committee, I spend most of my time there, and I'm actually co-sponsoring 2 pieces of legislation in education, not on my committee. But I've been working with a group that's been looking at things like apprenticeships and alternatives to education. But we need to have every child ready to be the best that he can be. And part of that, and we talked about the AP breakfast and the AP potential types of things. And again, David Ryan's name comes up here again, because he brought some of those things to
Now,
the
what does
forefront.
the AP breakfast do exactly, just to clarify?
So that brings students who scored in certain areas of the PSAT together for a breakfast to talk about AP opportunities and to say, hey, you did really well. Maybe you want to take an AP psychology class. Maybe that's not even something you've thought about doing, but you could be really successful there.
That's one thing that I saw personally in school, is that AP classes weren't promoted to everyone. I mainly took level 3 classes. I never got promoted AP classes. I could have taken AP US History, AP Government, and I signed up for them, but they clashed with other classes. But no one ever came and said, hey, you scored great on, you took a psych class and you scored great on these tests. Have you thought of doing AP Psych or AP Calculus,
You're going
AP
to be
Physics?
so good at this.
And I think things like that, when a student hears that they could be really successful and they start to pursue things and find that they have interests and passions in, that's where we can be really successful as a district. If we can get kids into those classes and smaller classes where they can forge great connections with those teachers in those AP classes who can help them move along, who can help them see that they have successful areas, that they can go to college for those things, I think we can do a really good job.
I have about 200 other topics here to cover, and we are probably within 8 minutes of closing. And so what I think I'd like to do now is, if there's one major topic that you'd like to get to, let's get to that immediately. And then we'll close off, because I'm thrilled with this grouping. We are all very different. We're different in ages, we're different in backgrounds, but we're not different in our passion for young people and our willingness to bring anything and everything to the table. And so if there's one topic you'd like to get to, or we'll start to wrap up and let everybody, just let the listening audience know who we are, what we'd like to bring to the table if we're reelected. Any topic to go first, though? Anything you're
I've
burning
got a couple
to say?
small things
All right.
that I know have been hot topics in the area lately. One is we talked about teachers. There is a PAC, a political action committee in the city, that is looking for a hiring freeze on our teachers. I want to let people know that that is a very scary thing to me to think about. Each of our education levels has different certifications. So our elementary classes are already fairly large right now, at or near capacity. If we had a hiring freeze there and we had teachers retire, then we are at a very scary point there, because we cannot move high school teachers or middle school teachers down to the elementary level because they're not certified there.
Now, are members of the board part of this PAC, or been
There are
exposed to-
people that are
Yeah.
that are part of the PAC.
Okay, so that can-
But so things like that concern me. We are also redistricting is also a topic that we hear over and over again. And again, class size comes to an issue for me there. I want people to understand that yes, we do need to redistrict for many different reasons, but it is not a cure-all for our district. Redrawing lines at the elementary school, for example, is not going to solve our problems at that level, because we have full classes at all of our
Were you
elementary
the one I was
schools.
talking to about this, that you and I decided, I mean, you and I discussed that it's more than just changing schools, like we really have to get to the root cause of some of these things?
We
you know,
do.
Before we, either before or while we're making all these
We
big
do, and I
changes?
think, and
Right.
I wrote an article for the Union Leader recently saying, I think we really need to re-envision our district.
We do.
What do we want the end product to look like? Do we want to have mixed grade classrooms like we talked about that's happening in some of our schools? There are Montessori programs around that are very successful. Is that something we want to do? Do we want to have leveling all the way?
Do we want
where
our
a
schools
student is in
competing?
levels?
Right.
Do we want schools competing? What do we want as a
Magnet schools,
city?
there are varieties, yes.
Right.
Like
we need to
all our
decide.
public schools, have at it, go whichever one you want. That's
Right.
Right, and there are pros and cons to all of those things, but I think that's a conversation we really need to have, is what do we want the end product to look like? And it's going to constantly change, because 21st century learning is consistently changing, careers are changing, but we need to evaluate that before we just start moving students around, because if we do move students around, it's not going to cure our elementary class sizes. We need to figure out where we want to go.
I've been spending a little bit of time lately in the library, just the library section, and simply because, some of the libraries have been, had a little bit of money, so I kind of just wanted to know, because it's actually, that's called the media services, so I just want to know it's a little bit of pressure on there, and as far as up-to-date technology, and I wanted to make sure, see if they were up-to-date on technology, but somebody mentioned a thing today that even the feeder pattern that we have, it's important to actually address the library thing from that too, because I guess librarians know where students come from based on different schools and their exposure to the library.
To books.
So
And
it's
I'm
interesting.
going to
how
have to bring
that was
everybody
like-
to a close here. I'm going to ask each of you for maybe one quick minute to let our listening audience know
You
who
can
you
have
are
mine
very
if you
quickly
want.
and what you would bring to the board if reelected. Dan, please.
Oh, see, once again, I have to answer it first. Like the other night, I had to answer every
down-
question
you're
first.
down
the
to 30
education
seconds.
But I'm basically gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And first of all, that's realizing that things change, but it's the mission, the vision, and honestly, it's partnering with the community. It's pretty much what a lot of us do anyway. It's speaking to students and listening to students is, and I've always thought that maybe perhaps that we can split up as a board and just sort of have like 1 year into elementary, middle, and high, just split us up, 3 here, 2 there, whatnot, and after a year switch, because that way we can have student advisory boards at every single school.
Thank you.
So I thought that would be a good
Thank
thing.
you.
So that's where I'm going with that.
I'm sorry. I need to get the others in, if I
Yeah,
may,
you know-
please.
you know I'm a
Erica,
bad
please.
judge of time.
That's okay. I've been on the board for several years now. I'm also running for state representative. The one thing that I will continue to bring to the board is common sense planning. I think we need to have civil discussions. Everybody should be professional around the board. I think that is extremely important. And I think we need a focus on student achievement. Enough of these debates around the table that have nothing to do with students. We need to look at the data. We need to look at the programs that are having success around the district, spread those programs, and completely focus our efforts on student achievement.
I agree. Thank you. Ethan?
Well, hard to follow up with that. But yeah, we do need to focus on the student achievement. We need to all work together so we can really, sort of rebrand our schools to make them much better. So that way we're truly, the students are going to get the best education that they can get. We have all these startups down in the mill yards, so we should be working with them. So that way students can go somewhere after they graduate. So that way,
ELOs.
Yep, ELOs. So that way they can get good jobs in the industry that they want. So if so graciously elected, along with the rest of you, we can all work together. So that way we can really truly accomplish some great things in our schools here.
Quite literally, our hour has gone very, very quickly, and I wish we had another hour. I'm Connie Van Houten. I'm also an incumbent running for re-election. I basically am running on my experience, my skill set, my background in education. As I said, it goes from kindergarten, basically right up through the college level. I think that, and Erica, will find this very soon too, because I hope she'll join me at the state legislature. There is a great carryover between what's going on in the state and what's going on at the city hall level of the school board, and I hope to be able to bring some of that in. As I said, I'm working on some legislation related to education, and I'm watching very carefully a voucher bill, which will change our conversations very greatly should the voucher bill go through. And so, very humbly, I would like to say that I would ask for your consideration for voting for me. I'd like to thank each of my guests. I think each of you has brought a great deal to the table, and I respect everything that you said, because we are all individuals who bring something to the plate for the city of Manchester. Thank you, MCTV, for allowing us time for this special.
Thank you, in there.
I will return to my radio show, What's Cool in Manchester Schools, and go back to that format very, very soon. In the meantime, have a great night, Manchester. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
Halloween.
you.